Hey, yo, I just came up with this amazing new phone idea. Check this out.
Interesting. What is this thing?
It's the iPhone, you get it? It looks like an eye. I put the speaker up here.
You're a little too late there, buddy, because there's already an iPhone.
Yeah, but this one, it literally looks like an eye, so it's called an iPhone.
You don't understand. There's already an iPhone. Apple makes it. They've been making it for 15 years. They have a trademark, man.
Then... Hey, check this out now. This is the J phone. It looks like a J.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Scott K. As silly as that intro may have been, from what I gathered, this is pretty much what happened to make the most oddly named keyboard to date. The JRIS65. What the heck is a gyros? It's like when people say gyros or fajitas. It's gyros and fajitas. It seems like the original name for the board was supposed to be IRIS65, but IRISLAB found out there is another keyboard already named the Iris, so they decided to just pretty much go one row down to make it Jris. Yes, the name is terrible, but what about the keyboard itself? Well, I can tell you, the keyboard itself more than makes up for that naming blunder with its looks and performance. I can tell you right now, this is the only 65% keyboard since the QK65 in the same price point that can actually go toe-to-toe with the QK65, starting at $155. You heard that right. I am excited. Let's get started. So the JRIS65 is supposed to be an entry-level 65% aluminum gasket-mounted keyboard by IRISLAB. I say entry-level in quotations because this is not really entry. The price may be, but you'll be surprised at the level of detail and what it brings to the table. IRISLAB was trying to create a high-level, beautiful, wall-typing and sounding keyboard with as much options as possible. And you know what? They absolutely succeeded. Not only is it a beautiful keyboard, it also has some tricks up its sleeve as well. Starting out with the packaging, like the QK65 and the Zoom 65, the JRIS65 also comes in a nice carrying case. Inside the carrying case, you have all the goodies to build out this keyboard. You have the basic hardware, the feet, the rubber pads, and so on. This is also a gasket-mounted board, but rather than using the pour-on foam, it's using gasket socks and jackets. If you recall, the socks are smaller and allows for more flex, while the jackets cover the entire tab and does add a bit more firmness. So this is something that you can decide and what you want to see in your own keyboard. Then you also have the plates. In this case, I received the Palm as well as the FR4. This one specifically is the Black Core FR4. Then you got the PCBs. So here's a look at both the hot swap and also the solder version of the PCBs. But there's something special about this, and we'll get to that later. Finally, you got some foam also, lots of it, but it's up to you to either use it or not, so, you know. Now moving on to the case. This is where it gets really delightful. The one I have is a milky white case with a black PVD stainless steel mirror weight. Black PVD stainless steel mirror? Where did I see that before? Yup, you've seen that in Owlabs board before. The standard version will have an anodized aluminum weight instead, but I would say that this PVD stainless steel is well worth it. The added weight as well as the looks, I mean, look at it, it's beautiful. Another interesting fact about this case, it's a hidden screw design. This means from the outside, there is no visible screw at all. They achieved this by making the top and bottom case join together from the inside. This is what it looks like with the screw right here. But wait, there's more. You can get this in Bluetooth wireless too. If you do, the battery will fit right here in this little slot. If you go with the wired version instead, you get this handy little rubber puck that fits into this space instead. And since the JRIS65 uses a daughter board, it fits right in the middle and there is a channel for the plug and the wire to rest in as well. So at this point, you can see that you have a lot of different options for colors, the weights, the plates, the PCB, the interface, and even more. IRISLAB told me that even the highest end configuration with all the options checked, the JRIS65 will stay under $250. Now, let's take a closer look at its components. Both the plates I have are nicely cut with flex cuts everywhere. If you take a look at the FR4 plate, you get the Link 65 vibes here. Is there more air or more plate? Very heavily cut plate. I also read that the black core FR4 is slightly stiffer than the standard FR4. Can't really tell the difference, but that's what it's supposed to be. Remember what I said about the PCB being interesting? Check this out. So it's a 1.2mm thin PCB. It has south-facing orientation. Even the hot swap has enough options to use with stepped caps lock, split left shift, split backspace, ISO. Only thing missing is the spacebar configurations, but it pretty much covers everything else. Underneath it all, it uses the standard KO hot swap sockets and is customizable with VIA and QMK. Now the fun part. The JRIS is a PCB gasket mounted board. What does that even mean? That means that the actual gasket tabs are off the PCB and not the plate. This means, wait for it, you can go full plateless. Now, plateless is not for everyone. It has a very distinctive typing feel. It's very free moving, I guess. However, it's an option that you do have and can do if you want to. I'll also build this thing plateless later to show you what I mean by that. Then you get the foam, lots of it. You start with the first layer of the lowercase foam. Then you get a second layer for good measure. Then you get the typical plate foam, then the PE foam. But this PE foam is interesting and I'll cover that later as well. Finally, the tape mod. If you recall, I believe Tiger 80 from KBDFANS was probably the first board that came with this thing included. The tape mod modifies the sound of the board and also increases the volume of the board a little bit as well. The JRIS65 has a custom cut layer that you kind of stick under, so it's really nice and convenient. It's actually very thin though, so it's not quite a huge impact like the typical 2 layers that I usually throw on. Now that we got all the components out of the way, let's get to building. But before we go into the build, a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is an online service that helps you print PCBs, do 3D printing, or even CNC machining. If you're an aspiring keyboard designer or whatever else designer, you can take your design and simply upload it to get something made quick. Or, if you have the source code for a PCB that you already have and you need a replacement, you can also get that done as well. They can handle all types of PCBs from your simple single layer designs to multi-layer stacks. Beyond PCBs, if you want to try making your own case, PCBWay can machine that as well. Now, a very exciting new service that PCBWay offers, OEM. Instead of just making a single component, you can actually task PCBWay to be an OEM manufacturer and make the whole thing. They can do anything from PCBs to CNC cases to even assembly. And using global manufacturing, they can offer very competitive prices. Is there a keyboard on the horizon? Well, check out OEM at PCBWay. So for the first build, I will be using everything that they provide and recommend it also for building. This first build will be with the hot swap PCB. For the stabs, I decided to go with the 1.2mm TX stabs since these are specifically made for thin PCBs. And remember what I said about the PE foam? This one, it has a slightly thicker and has an interesting leathery texture to it. Not sure what kind of impact this will have, but we'll find out later. I heard y'all like low pitch sounding boards, so I'll be using the Gateron Box Ink Blacks. For the plate, I decided to go with the palm plate to kind of play off the whole lower pitch sound profile that we're going for. Once you put everything back together, this is what it looks like. Now, the provided tape is all cut to size. It's perfectly matched to the PCB, so it's very easy to actually put on. Between the gasket socks and the jackets, I do like a softer typing feel, so I'll be using the socks. They just fit right onto the tab like this. It's pretty easy. The whole entire thing will then just kind of rest into the case like this after you plug in the daughter board JST cable. Put everything together with the hidden screws, so nice and simple and easy. Now for the keycaps. I really wanted the caps to emphasize and play well with the subtle milky white beigey color look of the case. I immediately thought Osume caps. If you recall, I used them for the QK65 in the past. So this time I'll be using the little ghost caps by Osume. These guys make really subtle, low-key colored caps that work really well for builds like this, the subtle, more, white or beigey colors. I mean, you get this cute little ghost card too. And the packaging is just so fun. The caps are also made of thick PBT and that's die subbed, so overall the quality is good, it sounds good. Bam, the whole thing comes together and just looks absolutely fantastic. The subtle colors really work together as well. It's really nice to see how the upper angle weight kind of peeks to the rear and the overall curvature of the hidden screw design really creates a nice and clean look. If you can't tell by now, I really like how the JRIS65 looks, no matter how weird the name is. So, how does a JRIS65 type then? Let's find out. So what did you think about that? It is actually very reminiscent of my QK65 build. The QK65 is a bit louder and has a bigger sound, but the JRIS65 also has a deeper, lower pitched sound. So perhaps it's also the switches that are making that slight difference, but I would say that sound-wise, the JRIS65 is right up there with the QK65. If you like a more vibrant, louder sound, then QK65 probably is your choice. If you want a more deeper and heavier sound, the JRIS65 will do that for you. Feel-wise, it's actually very similar to the QK65. It's on the firmer side, but definitely has some give. Also, it has a nice isolated flex versus like a total plate bounce you have seen in something like a Link 65. Okay, so I told you about the plateless build, so let's check that out now. Essentially, if you do the plateless build, you do it without a plate. So the switches literally fit onto the PCB like this. For plateless builds, it's recommended that you go with the solder board, since otherwise it's really easy for the switches to fall out. It's also hard to align them. It's not the best, so go with the solder build. Also for the plateless build, I recommend that you use the lower foam. The plate is 1.2 millimeters and it's so heavily cut that it's extremely flexible. You can see here how flexible and loose this is if you go without the foam below. You should use one to keep it from bottoming out into the lower board too hard. Now, the plate builds are very interesting. Instead of just up and down flex, especially due to all the cuts on the JRIS, it also has a little bit of roll and also pitch. So when you're typing, the keys kind of move in like all directions. It's very different and I'm sure some people will love it and some people not so much. For this build, I am still using the same GAT Box Black inks and Osume keycaps. I removed all the sound modifiers here, so it's just bare. It's like more of a classic sound, so let's listen to how it sounds. That's very different type of sound, right? Obviously there's no foam, so all that foamy sound is gone. I also removed the tape mod as well, so that volume is also decreased and it's a little bit higher pitch because of that. It's a cleaner, but also very quiet sound. Since all the sound is kind of going out into the open, you hear a lot more of the raw switch sound versus the combination of like the plate, the case that you see in a normal plated build. So the feel is quite different. For me, I would stick with the plate build. It's just more my taste. Plus, I feel if the solder PCB was a standard 1.6 millimeters, it would actually be better off for the plateless build. Perhaps something that IRISLAB could consider for the actual launch of the board. So after all this, what is my final thought? Well, I think we live in a great time right now to be a custom keyboard enthusiast. Why? Because now, there are so many keyboards under $200 considered an entry that rivals mid and even high-end boards of yesteryear. Case in point is this JRIS65. It definitely looks much more higher end than its $155 price point. The sound of the board is great, the feel is very nice. There are lots of customization options. The plate, the PCB, the case, wired, wireless, and it goes on. So if you ask me, I would definitely recommend the JRIS65 as a great 65 option. Not just an entry, but just as a good keyboard overall. Now, the million-dollar question, is this better than the QK65? If you recall my previous Zoom 65 review, I said it was good, but I would still say the QK65 was a nicer board. In this case, I would say the JRIS65 is on par with the QK65. If you want something more elaborate, detailed, delicate looking, the JRIS65 is that board. QK65 is a little bit more business-like, right, with sharper edges. If you want a louder board, the QK65 is slightly louder. If you want a deeper board, the Jris is actually deeper. Feel-wise, they're pretty equivalent. Customization-wise, they both offer a lot. It's a good problem to have. At the end of the day, you can either go with this or that and you will not be disappointed. And it's purely preferential in this situation. Like the QK65, I feel that the one issue you will definitely run into is the availability. Everyone's gonna hop on this board, and this may be a limited run board. I was told like 2,000 pieces globally. I hope that IRISLAB could, consider being more widely available, but at this point, they are a smaller keep studio and not sure if they can actually scale as much, so if you like what this is all about, you better get on that quick. So, as usual, if you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll have more content for you in the future. Thanks.